Hello everybody, let's talk Persona 3. I had a plan to stream a playthrough of Persona 4 Golden every Saturday. I put a poll on a quick post, and that was the game people voted on. But then I learned there was going to be a remake of Persona 4, and then I thought, why play it now when I can do so later with all the quality of life stuff from Persona 5 in there? And so I pivoted to Persona 3 Reload, the remake of Persona 3. Once upon a time, I watched the Persona 3 anime movies. And I know that would make you think I know what this game is about, and no, I don't. No way, it was way too much time ago. And while I do have some kind of flashes of memory of some elements of that story, I think one of the main villains is like a creepy hippie. I'm not entirely sure, I could be mistaken. So what I want to say is, even having watched those movies way back when, this was very much a new experience for me. I was coming into this fully blind. But I had played a bit of 4 Golden, and of course I played through Persona 5 and then Persona 5 Royal. I had some expectations for how a Persona game should start, and I can safely say Persona 3 surprised me. It didn't match any of my expectations. The problem is, that's not a good thing in this case. Persona games, in general, take a little while to get going, but Persona 4 layers a bunch of different things over the course of the first hour or so, like a murder mystery, shifty characters, missing people, and an urban legend of a channel only accessible at midnight, going through a TV into another world, and other things. You have a lot to sink your teeth in. Persona 5 takes that even further. It still layers hooks all over the place, but adds another one, a personal one. Your character suffered some form of injustice, and the game kicks off in medias res on a future mission that ends in disaster, but one that oozes style and has some amazing music. The result is that even if things take a while to pick up, you're invested, you're likely hooked. You still gotta wait a long while for the whole gameplay part of it to really kick off, but story-wise, character-wise, despite Ryuji being in Persona 5, there's some good stuff there. Persona 3, on the other hand, is an unending slog of uninteresting characters, annoying ones, and a plot that just won't start. No real conflict to speak of, no immediate threat, not to mention writing that refuses to acknowledge things until much, much, much later. Like the start of the game, for example, where our dear protagonist is walking through blood-covered streets full of coffins. He never comments on it, doesn't acknowledge that it's weird, and no one brings it up for days on end. In fact, not bringing stuff up is kind of a trend for the first chunk of hours, it seems. While this is clearly a negative, I do hold some fascination over it. It's pretty clear to me how Persona 3's very slow burn approach influenced how Persona 4 and 5 focus on giving you a quicker look at the overall plot and some form of narrative hook. Hell, I looked it up. One of the goals of Persona 4, according to the developers, was to give the players a definite goal, something that would give them a sense of accomplishment throughout the game. And that, of course, led into Persona 5's intro of, you'll get to be this cool at some point. But, back to the story. You get to the dorm, sign a mysterious contract with an equally mysterious little boy who's intensely creepy, especially because you're sure he's watching you all the time. Something he has in common with the rest of the cast, who watch our main guy sleep. That felt icky, to say the least. These are 2 teens and a grown-ass man watching a young boy while he sleeps for days on end. You kinda get what they're going for, but it's not acknowledged how creepy it is, nor is it ever mentioned to the main character. And yet, these are the people driving the first social link. These are the people I'm supposed to trust? Say what you will about Persona 5 and the whole deal of the main character being mistrusted and mistreated by everyone, given his criminal record, at least the social link characters felt like people you could actually trust, in varying degrees, of course. And then there's Junpei. Now, I know a little bit of Persona history, and I know P3 was the first game developed by the now P Studios of Atlas, a completely different group of people from the previous games, so I can only surmise that this was the game that introduced the concept of the annoying first friend, because Junpei is the Ryuji of this game. He's loud, he's annoying, he's whiny, and I really didn't want to spend any time with him. And here I come to one of my main concerns and annoyances with P3 Reload, and it's the slew of phantom choices, false choices, where no matter what you actually choose, the response and actions that follow are the same. Every time Junpei harassed the character about following him to a mall or a meal, I said no. I really didn't like him, but inevitably, I ended up following him to wherever he wanted to go. I didn't want to spend time with him. I also didn't want to spend time with the first guy you actually get a social link with. Tomochka, I think it was. He's bland in design, bland in his dialogue, but suddenly social link established. Given that the game is forcing Junpei on me, I am waiting for the moment where he becomes a social link so I can fully ignore him and never ever 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 hang out with him. I just don't like him. He gets on my nerves. To be fair, most of the characters get on my nerves. Yukari is fine, she's not annoying, just uninteresting, which is the best I can say about everyone else. Worst offenders are the teachers at the school, who grate on me on a scale I didn't think possible. It breaks my immersion so thoroughly that these intensely incompetent buffoons are teachers at the school. At least the P5 teachers, with obvious evil exceptions, they were played pretty straight. They were just there to do a job. The ones in Persona 3 need to be fired. One of them just wants to do poetry, and the other is obsessed with just samurai, instead of actually giving his classes. Persona 3 drags on so much that the big Persona awakening moment comes in around the 57-minute mark. And I know that because I pay attention to the whole thing of the first hour and, hook potential based on that. By the way, hook potential not looking very good for Persona 3 Reload. Not to mention that instead of a cool fight with an interestingly designed multi-arm monster, the thing's taken care of in a cutscene and you're just left fighting two amorphous blobs. Which leads me to another point of contention. Well, actually two of them. The first is I thought this moment would have been the tutorial fight. I was wrong. The redhead girl from the team takes you to the endless procedurally generated dungeon and boring location of Tartarus and insists on stopping you every few minutes, and especially every fight, to introduce yet another tiny little detail of combat, and it just takes so much. She talks too much. A simple pop-up with all the controls for combat would have been enough, rather than this piecemeal tutorial. It's frustrating. The game seems to constantly want to stop me from doing what I want to do, be it fighting or simply go shopping. There are at least 3 instances of, hey, these are the shops and points of interest. Want to interact with them? No, not yet. Wait a few more days for that to happen. I was even forced to return to the dorm and wait for another day to actually start doing the floors of the endless dungeon after the tutorial fights. That annoyed me. So after that, I just simply decided to ignore anything this character had to say and just kept going up floors. Every time she showed up, I skipped her dialogue and just moved on. I was losing my temper with every interruption. I was shouting at the screen, "Shut the hell up! Jesus Christ, stop telling me... Stop giving me tutorials! Just let me play the game!" I just wanted to play the game, and it seemed like Persona 3 had a vested interest in me not doing so. And my second issue is the enemy design. The shadows are as uninteresting and bland as the dungeon they're in. They're just blobs with masks, but blobs nonetheless. I hate having to run comparisons with Persona 5, but that title does it so much better, using Shin Megami Tensei demons and monsters as the shadows, instead of, bland oozes and other little critters. Beyond the one monster killed off in the cutscene, I've yet to see one that is actually interesting to look at. There have been 3 different capstone monster fights. Guardians, they call them. Special encounters every 5 floors or so. The first one is a set of birds, the second one is a big wheelie monster, and the third is a big chunking hunk of metal thing. They're a step up from the normal fodder, but they still lack a lot of charm and personality. Like it's a wheel with a plate and a face. It's not what I would call evocative. And visually, they might be a step up, but mechanically, they have nothing new to offer. Just the usual fare of find weakness, exploit it, all-out attack, rinse and repeat. Only one that proved to be kind of a challenge was the metal chunker, because I didn't have any of the required elements to take him out, and so it became a slog. I even tried to just let myself die in that fight and ended up winning. But I'm honestly still waiting for one Persona enemy to offer more than just different or unusual resistances. With all this said, it's not all negative, of course. I like the music, though the Tartarus background music is awful. And the whole shuffle system to acquire combat bonuses and money and personas is pretty interesting. Very different from what I know of Persona 5 and Shin Megami Tensei 5. For the shuffling, I mostly focused on extra XP and skill cards at the start, but by the end of my stream I was focusing more on just cold hard cash, because the items and equipment are pretty expensive. I'm honestly hoping that the characters get a bit more interesting, or at least less aggravating, and that the plot picks up. Give me a mission, give me a goal, something to strive for, rather than just go every other day into the endless dungeon, because there's nothing else to do. Looking forward to continuing the playthrough next Saturday and just see how far we can get and if things pick up, because if they don't, this playthrough is gonna be a very, very long one.